Hey guys, welcome back to another video in the Python tutorial for beginners that we have going on. In the last video we talked about assignment operators, and we talked about the fact that the equal sign in Python and most programming languages is really just used for assignment of values, right? From the right side, the value will be on the right side, and then it will be assigned to whatever variable is on the left side of the equal sign. Well, today we're going to talk about comparison operators. And they actually do use the equal symbol, but you'll see that they use it in different ways. So you need to be really careful to make sure that you don't mix these up, because usually when you're doing comparisons, you're doing them in such a way as to make a decision about some code. Let me go ahead and fire up PyCharm. I've already got my Programming Vault project open. So let's just dive right into it. The first comparison that we're going to look at is whether something is equal or not. So the way that you check for equality in Python, and again most programming languages, is using a double equal sign. So let me go ahead and set up the problem. Let me just make a couple of variables. A equals 2 and B equals 3. So let's say we want to check to see if these are equal or not. So when we do a comparison on these, it's going to return a result of true or false, right? It's going to return a Boolean. So we need to have something to save that in. So we'll save it in something called result, another variable called result, and then we'll print that out. So we'll say result is equal to, and we'll go ahead and put this in parentheses just to make sure to keep it straight in our heads. I don't think you actually have to for the programming. So we'll check that, right? Is A equal to B? Notice it's not just like A equals B. That would set A equal to B. It's A equal B. It's how you compare for equality in programming. And we'll print the result. Not sure what happened there. We'll print the result. See what happens. And it did return a Boolean of false, because 2 is not equal to 3. If we were to set A and B equal to the same value, if they are both equal to 3, and we check those, then it will return true. Okay, so we'll go ahead and set A back to 2. The next one that we want to talk about, and I might just make a little list up here for you guys. So we'll call that equal, and it's the double sign. The next one we want to talk about is not equal. Sometimes it's valuable to check if values are not equal to each other, and we do that with an exclamation mark and an equal sign. So if we checked whether the A is not equal to B and print the result, if A is 2 and B is 3, we would hope that we would get a true, right? Because it evaluates this expression as to whether it's true or not. A is not equal to B. A is 2, B is 3. That's true. So true comes back to the result. Some people get confused there because you're saying, well, A is not equal to B, so that means it's false that A is equal to B. But that's not how an interpreter or a compiler interprets, right? It interprets everything within these parentheses as a Boolean expression, right? Whether this is true or not will be returned to result. A is not equal to B, that's true, right? If we change it so that they are equal, and then we evaluate A is not equal to B, then it'll return false, right? It evaluates this expression, A is not equal to B. They are in fact equal, so it returns false. So that was not equal. The next one we're going to look at is greater than. And again, these are all just comparison operators. It's used to compare values, right? So, I mean, you do that by the greater than symbol, of course. So if we say A is greater than B, that doesn't look to be true, right? So we would hope that would return a false. And it does. But if we say B is greater than A, returns true because B is greater than A. Okay, so that's how greater than works. Should have probably put a capital G there. Less than works pretty much the same way, just with the reverse symbol. So if we put here that B is less than A, we'll get a false. If we put here that A is less than B, we'll get a true. So that's less than. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. Then there's also greater than or equal. And how do we do that? We do that with the greater than symbol and an equal sign. So if we say A is greater than or equal to B, it returns false. And if we change them around and say B is greater than or equal to A, it returns true. What if we set them equal? Right? If we're evaluating whether it's greater than or equal to one another, it should still return true. And it does. Go ahead and set that back before I forget it. The next comparison operator that we're going to look at is less than or equal to. And you guessed it, we put a less than symbol and an equal. We can just turn this one around. Oh, not like that. So we can just turn that one around and say B is less than or equal to A. Go ahead and think what you think the output's going to be. Is B less than or equal to A? It's not. It's false, right? And we could switch it around and say A is less than or equal to B. And that does in fact return true. And the same would be true here. If you set them equal, it would print out a true for them being equal as well. So those are the comparison operators we wanted to look at. And now we want to look at some logical operators. There's three that we want to look at. The first one will be AND. And this evaluates to true if all expressions are true. So if we go here and we say the result equals A is, let's just make it easy. A equals to B, we'll give it some more variables. And C is greater than B. Now it's going to evaluate these things in a row. So when we say this, A is equal to B, it's going to be false, right? And then it's going to say, and C is greater than B. That's going to be true, but since both of these aren't true, we would expect it to return false. And that's correct. So the AND logical operator will only return true if all expressions that you're evaluating are true. I could just keep going out here and run as many expressions as I want to, and whatever, right? And whatever. You could keep going, and if any one of those is false, it'll return false. Likewise, if they're all true, it'll return true for your result. So it's very important, right, to understand the logical operators. So that's and that's how AND works. Now let's look at OR. It evaluates whether any of the expressions are true. Or one of them, actually. You normally only use OR with two expressions. So we can use OR here. So in the same way, if we keep the same setup that printed out false and we use an OR, what do you think that's going to be? It's going to be true, right? Because OR just evaluates if either one of these is true. Right? A is equal to B is not true. And it says or C is greater than B. That is true. If either one of these is true, then this will evaluate to true. And you can kind of look at this as one whole expression, right? Made up of multiple expressions, right? Because really the interpreter is just evaluating all this as one expression and then sending the answer back to result. So that's or. So and is when all expressions are true. Or is when either expression is true. And now the last one we're going to look at is not. And this evaluates to true if the expression is not true. I know that's a little confusing, but let's just say here, we could use it right here actually. So right now, if we run this expression and we say A is equal to B, which is not true, or C is greater than B, which is true, it returns a true, right? This expression will return a true every time because one of these is true. But if we just go right here and put not in front of it, all it's going to do is reverse what it returns me. So it should return a false now, right? Because we're saying not this expression. And this expression evaluates to true. So not this expression is false. If this expression were to evaluate to false, that would make it evaluate to false, right? Because if we say A equals to B, that's not true. Or C is less than B, that's also not true. So this or expression is going to return a false. But if we say not this expression, it should return a true. And it does. That's very valuable. I feel like the comparison operators, with the exception of the equal and the not equal, are pretty well known. You probably already kind of knew those, but I really just wanted to make sure that you fully understood the double equals and the not equals and how that worked. But if I had to pick, I'd say the and, the or, and the not are super important compared to all these, because those are used over and over again in all sorts of loops and ways to make decisions. And that's why we're learning them. We're learning them because, not just because I'm trying to tell you all these things for you to remember, right? We're learning these because I know that we're going to be using these coming up. You have to use them when you study conditional statements and loops and things like that. You have to be able to evaluate expressions logically, right? And you have to be able to make decisions based on what the result of those evaluations are. So, at any rate, I think I'll go and end it right here. I really enjoyed making this video. If you found it helpful, feel free to go ahead and like and subscribe to my channel. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comments below. If I don't hear from you, I will see you next time. Thanks for watching.